Yeah, it really depends on the tank size. I always like to when we're talking tank size, like a snail or like a hermit per gallon is kind of what I go by. So my 75 gallons, but you do have some water displacement, so you got to take that in consideration too. But I have 75. I try to keep track of this, but it's super hard because I'm replenishing constantly as far as the snails and a few of the hermits go. But within the 75 range, I have a mixture of some snails, hermit crabs, emeralds, even some other shrimps and such. And I try to keep that around like the 75, like numbered.
But you want a good mix, right? You don't want just the same kind of snail in your tank. You want snails, you want hermit crabs, you want maybe even something a little more exotic like a fighting conch or something like that. Even though fighting conchs can get in there and really knock things over, in my experience, they just go where they want to go. They don't care what's in front of them.
Yep.
But they do a pretty good job at cleaning. And you have a few examples as well that you brought to the table today.
Yeah. So yeah, we got the blue light hermit crab, just you know, common. Every store and every website practically has them. Relatively cheap, and like Joey said earlier, they are reef safe. Then I got a little pistol shrimp I collected a few months back, or actually my buddy collected it. They're just, it's kind of like I want to say decorative cleanup crew, you know. It doesn't do too much, but it's going to eat some of the organic matter and dead matter that settles to the bottom of the system. But they're kind of just a fun little creature you can add to kind of entice your little cleanup crew and make it a little more exotic, if I could say. And then on the bottom right here, you have the orange chestnut snail. You don't see those too often anymore. I got quite a few in the studio and in the 75 gallon.
That's a pretty cool looking snail.
Yeah, they're really cool. You don't really, like, they used to be a lot more common, but I don't know if it's just like people just aren't collecting them as much, or if the shrimpers offshore aren't really getting them as much as bycatch. But they're relatively cool. They do like cooler temperatures. But I have had no issues whatsoever keeping them in my reef tank. I mean, they're really good algae eaters, and they have a really pretty shell, so it's something different you can add just to kind of, you know, spice it up a little bit. Yeah, there's a lot of different species of snails, hermit crabs, shrimps, and other organisms that you can add to your system to kind of add some diversity. Because I always, on my systems, like to have a whole bunch of diversity, because the more diverse your system is, the better off it's going to be, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And you also have different jobs for different critters too. So like a nacerious snail, that thing's going to be in your sand bed, turning over the sand, foraging through there. You got your astrea snails, that's going to be what you see on the glass of your aquarium, eating that film algae and stuff. The thing with the astrea snails is, though, if they get flipped over, they're not going to flip themselves. They're not going to right themselves back up. So you have to be mindful of that. So just take a look at your aquarium, make sure everyone's accounted for and they're flipped over, or you're going to have to reach in there and turn them up. Or you'll start noticing that you're losing snails because they're just falling over on their back and disappearing.
I mean, a good alternative to the astreas is the trocus snails. They have some pretty cool shells, and they are known to flip themselves back over if they fall over, which is kind of convenient. They're definitely more expensive, though, because they're imported to the United States. They're not native. The astrea snails are native, so they tend to be relatively cheap. But I just think adding a few of each kind, maybe, just to kind of see what you like and what you notice does the best work for you as well.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I wouldn't go out and buy 100 astreas and throw them in your tank. Maybe add a few of each kind and see kind of what works best for you and what you like the most. I mean, I have a few astreas in the 75, but I have a bunch of chestnuts and quite a few zebra turbos, and they seem to do the best for me. The astreas always seem, you know, they do well for a long time, and then they just slowly kind of just disappear. And I mean, they're cheap, so it's real cheap to just keep replenishing them. But I've had really good success with the chestnut snails and the zebra turbos, and the zebra turbos have like quadrupled in size since I put them in there. They're getting huge. But some of the other, like the conchs, there's a bunch of different species of conchs. The Florida fighting conch, you get like the little tiger sand conchs. Those are really cool. Spider conchs, and there's a whole bunch of other different kinds of conchs you can add to your system. Some of them stay smaller, some of them get quite large. So you just gotta kind of keep that in your mind when you're adding them to your tank. Do your research, try to figure out what you're going to do. And like we talked about in the past episode or the previous episode, kind of plan your tank out and kind of get a thought of kind of what you want to put in as far as cleanup crew, fish, and all that sort of stuff, so you can kind of gauge what kind of cleanup crew you can have. Because I mean, if you're going to do a predator tank, your cleanup crew options change dramatically. So there's a lot of different things you got to think about.